Good evening, everyone. How's it going today? It's Carpo here. I've got this microphone in front of me. I'm going to try to record these on audio as well. I usually have this thing sitting off to the side, but I want to make some decent recordings of these so I can have them for the future, since I tend to delete a lot of the videos I make. Today's video is going to be about dealing with difficult people, and it's something that I think we've all become proficient at over time, assuming that we give ourselves a chance to. And that means that we don't overreact to everything people do and make ourselves look like assholes in the process. But try not to make this too long, so I should just get to the point. Here's my little journal. It's a little leather-bound journal with a tree on it, and it's somewhat thick, but I take all my notes in here, or some of them, and a lot of the notes I take for my videos, I actually take them on just individual piece of computer paper, printer paper, and I just fold it in half and then just take my notes, and then someday I might compile them all and maybe I'll bind them into a journal. But it's easier for me to just take notes on a piece of paper, and I have a lot of thoughts that I want to share, so it's hard for me to not share them. I end up with stacks of things that I never talked about. So I know, it's just me rambling to camera, whoop-de-doo, right? So I have three types of difficult people, or rather three characteristics that I find to be difficult to deal with. And the first one is the self-absorbed person. And then I have a few examples, a few types of each one. One example is the person who always talks about their own problems, the victim, and these are ever-present and so common. I mean, we always run into the person who, you know, feels like the world's out to get them, and they're difficult sometimes. There's the people who always show off their new things and their new purchases. The guy, though, who, you know, always, look, I got the latest iPhone, and oh, I got this new car and this lease, and oh, check out these heated seats, and, you know, the show off, the person who lives through their items. Then there's the person who always tells stories about their lives and travels, always has to share where they're going or the places they've been. And then there's, for example, the kind of person who's always talking about the past, the nostalgic type. And, you know, I think we're all a little bit nostalgic, so it's not like I'm against nostalgia. But rather, some people, you know, can't hold a conversation. They're always talking about back in the good old days, and some people, you know, take it too far to you're like, okay, yeah, well, we live today, you know. So my second type of difficult person, and I do have a point to this, but the rude person. Now, I do not like rudeness. It's something that I'm very, you know, I may be a smartass sometimes, a little bit cynical, arrogant, whatever, but not rude. Rudeness is just uncalled for. One would be the kind of person who is embarrassing in public places, who maybe, like, you know, insults or berates somebody, you know, or they, you know, maybe just being rude in general, maybe rude to their loved one, spouse, or whatnot. Then there's the person who's rude to cashiers and anyone who's in a position where they are powerless because they're working. And these are the people who have a power trip, or they want to pull a power trip on someone who can't respond. I tend to be the person who, if I'm behind one of these people in line, I will say something because the cashier can't. Maybe it's not my place, and I usually don't, but sometimes. If a person's rude enough, then, you know, it's just something I don't like personally. Another form of rudeness is being blunt and tactless in conversation. That's just like not, you know, not thinking about what you're saying and just being utterly cutthroat, but not by accident, but on purpose, you know. And then there's the ones who interrupt and butt into everyone else's life and what they're doing. The person who's always telling another person how they should live, you know. There could be the hovering, you know, neighbor or a parent or a spouse, even anybody, you know. There's always somebody who wants to tell another person how they should live their life, but also butting into other people's conversations when you're not asked, and those kinds of things. And then the third type of difficult person is the emotional one. And these can be difficult too, and not just happy, several different emotions. There's the people who can get angry at the slightest provocation, the people that you have to tiptoe around because you're afraid if you say anything, they might just freak out and throw a fit and break shit. And a lot of people let the people like this just go. They're like, oh, well, he has an anger problem, instead of saying, you need to work on your anger problem. Then there's also the person who gets sad at the slightest provocation. Anything that possibly happens, anything that happens to them or others. And it seems to be we cherish the idea of being an empath today. You're super empathetic, but it's it's toxic to your own soul to have to put up, and feel sad for everyone else. So we have to have a wall put up for the world's sadness, because there's a lot of it. There are also the depressed people who do it as a way to get attention and then fall into that, and then it's the poor me pity act. Then there's the people who are scared of the world and the unknown, that have been so wrapped up and trapped in their small lives, their small town, wherever it might be, that they don't even, I don't even know what the rest of the world is like, at all. You don't even read or find any interest in it. It's just, and not just the rest of the world, but your neighborhood, your neighbor's neighborhood, that kind of stuff. Ignorance is not bliss in that way. It's, in my opinion, you can become scared of the world and the unknown, and you become xenophobic, and that's just the fear of the unknown. And often these kind of people end up falling into conspiracy theories, and the conspiracy theory community, the fanatics, the ones who are into everything that happens as a false flag. Some of these folks need a little bit of worldly understanding to realize that real things do happen, but when we've been shown that a few things are fake, everybody kind of freaks out. So anyhow, then there's the person who acts like life is so hard when we all deal with the same shit. That's the final one on here. I meet a lot of those folks, folks who have a lot of, I have pity for everyone, but we all go through the same shit. And I think this is why it's key to talk about the issues we have in our own lives. People, they don't want to hear that you're weak. They want to hear you're powerful, especially if you're a person who's speaking to large groups of people. So to get up as a presidential candidate, or as just a local leader or a bishop or anything, and just say, hey, I don't have all the answers and I'm not sure about this, that shows strength. But we've made it appear weak, because our society demands answers now. So the other page I've got here is just a few notes on maybe ways to deal with it. One of the things that we have is it's basically our attachment to things and people is something that has a lot to do with neurochemistry. So this is kind of on the same page. We become kind of slaves to our captors. We have a form of Stockholm syndrome, if you will, towards not our literal captors, but towards our leaders or those who represent us, whether it be our bosses or anybody who's in charge or has power. We kind of just give in and say, well, this is the way it is. But our brain chemistry tells us a lot. We've got dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, acetylcholine, and oxytocin. All of these working, and especially oxytocin in the way that it bonds us to one another. We can develop a very strong connection to people, places, and things. And this is why we can learn to actually love our leaders or our bosses or our captors in a way. Nostalgia leads to the good old day feeling, the feeling that things were once great and we can get back to that again. And I think this is often a problem of why we separate ourselves from one another, because other people don't share our version of the good old days, And when you really get down and start talking to people, you realize, wow, our generation wasn't like this. It was just my group of people was, and everybody else was different, But we do like to generalize, and we have this kind of grass is greener on the other side syndrome. So we're always looking to tomorrow, but we're also looking to the past with these rose-colored glasses. We tend to change as we age, whether we like it or not. Our opinions, our ideas, and our feelings about things change. But we often resist it. And when things kick us right in the eye, we blame other people for our problems. We say, well, it was the parents that did this, or look at these politicians that caused these problems, or this big company, you know, polluted this and it caused this. We're always looking for someone to point the finger at besides ourselves, and that's another kind of dishonorable and not very enjoyable trait to see in people, when they're always saying, look at what this person did, you know. I think it's kind of like pointing the finger back at ourselves. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I have a problem with this politician doing this, but if it's all you know, if it's a continual thing that actually gets you emotional, then it's time to rethink it. And sometimes we give our emotion away, in a way, you know, to things, because that's what you would call, I guess, you know, enjoying the drama, if you will. But all of us crave companionship and acceptance. And so a lot of people I've talked to actually deny that. They say, no, I like being alone, I like doing my own thing. And that's fine, maybe for some people, but I say a majority of people want acceptance and people in their lives and understanding. If we don't get that and we can't find it, then we lean on other things for our companionship. We can become very isolated, and I don't think it's really a healthy way. I think humans need other humans around to bounce ideas off of. So the more people we interact with, then the more we have a better view of what's really going on, if it matters to us. You know, there's a saying, the idle mind is the devil's playground. And I feel like these days, in the Western society, we have so much extra time to think that we create these little bubbles of reality. And I see it all the time, but I kind of step away from that and always try to keep an open mind, that nothing is as it seems, but nothing is as you say it is either, kind of thing, you know. Don't let your ideas define you. I think that this is a really important thing for us all to remember. We let our ideas define us, and then if somebody conflicts and disagrees with what we believe, then we take it personal and get upset. This is nowhere more clear than religion. I guess that's the best example. And politics, of course, too. But, you know, how dare you insult my God, you know, would be the kind of metaphor for everything I'm talking about. Even something down to a simple idea about an immigration policy, or it could be about whether we should go to the stars or not, or whether we should spend money on health care, a million different issues that people have that they might argue over. You should be able to get into a heated discussion and disagree and then walk away with not being personally hurt by it. Because the idea needs to be separated. And this is an important point, I think, because people associate themselves with their cars too. There's people out there who, you know, have had their car crashed into and got out and beat the shit out of someone and probably even killed people over them damaging their car in an accident. Other people who, you know, if you belittle or damage anything material that they have, then they take it very personally. To an extent, that's understandable, but, you know, sometimes it comes down to words, and we end up in a society like we have now, where people are saying that words are considered violence, which, that's the end, you know, right there. But I think we're just kind of trying to feel out how to get along, figure shit out. But so my last couple notes are: be careful who you open up to. Soul suckers are everywhere. You know, I open up to the world talking on YouTube, but, you know, there's a lot of things I keep to myself too, of course, and I don't burden everyone else with my bullshit. I got a lot of shit going on in my life. I got a lot of problems, and, you know, the same issues that most Americans deal with, you know, but they're all slightly different, and most of them are self-made, you know. I have a hard time getting myself to get things done sometimes, and it's really hard to, you know, figure out where to go. I've had issues with back pain, so I couldn't work, lost my career, all these different things, but I don't mope about it. I go on with life and say, you know, and in my experience, I found sometimes I sit back and say, I've been through all this shit. How do I keep kind of this good outlook and still make YouTube videos and talking about shit? I was like, because that's what humans do. That's what we do. Because we're not victims, you know. But then I think, well, then how do I share this with other people who do feel shitty and aren't able to get past the daily BS? And it's very difficult to know. So anyway, the soul suckers, the people who just want to drain you, you just have to keep an eye out for them. Those are the ones who are going to drain you of your energy before you know it, and you won't even be able to think straight. You know, have you ever gone out to help someone do something and you only maybe work a couple hours and hardly do anything, but you're exhausted when you get home? Why is that? It's because your mental exhaustion is far superior to physical. I can work a 10-hour day doing something I like and not even break a sweat or you know, feel tired. But, you know, the minute I have to be mentally aware, you know, that can be very draining. So if you spend a lot of time with someone who is constantly a difficult person, has one of those traits, or they're always, you know, making you feel shitty. Another one is people who are critical of you, and anybody who puts you down, or physically or mentally, you know. Don't put up with that shit. Don't put up with people's abuse. Abusers are, you know, so self-loathing that they take it out on others. So the last note I have is, we pretend to be stronger than we are, and it's okay to show our weakness. And coincidentally enough, that was like the first thing I talked about. You know, opening up to our honesty about ourselves and saying, you know, I don't know everything. I don't have all the answers. I don't have any of the answers, really, and I don't know what's going to work for everyone else. But I know that understanding difficult people and understanding not just the types, but the roots of these things, we can decide we can either talk with people and work out the differences, we can tolerate them, or we can just walk away from toxic people. And I've had to leave a lot behind in my life. And, you know, sometimes I go back and, you know, rethink it. I'm like, oh, well, maybe this person wasn't so bad, you know. Sometimes it's just taking a break from someone for a while, you know. It's not about anything like, you know, totally leaving someone for life, if you will. It's funny because I think that kind of about, when I was talking about AA the other day, it was like, that's how a lot of these people feel, as they're leaving the alcohol for life. At least if you leave the idea open that maybe one day I can have a drink again, that can ease a lot of tension. Of course, I don't, you know, I know that for a lot of people that's not possible, but the same way with people. I've talked to folks who say, well, I could never forgive so-and-so, they totally wronged me. And, you know, I've been wronged too. And it's easy to hold it in. You don't have to forget. You only have to forgive. And that's yourself. You do it yourself. It's not for them. And you don't even have to tell them. You just have to let it go in your heart. You have to let a lot of things go in your heart, and a lot of people go in your heart in life, in order to make things work. In order to make this, this world work, this life, this thing we call life. It's a crazy, chaotic mess. But it's a beautiful mess. I mean, just existence itself, something just undefinable. We can't even define life. I mean, it's an organization of cells that's working towards some end. And when I talk to people about evolution, and I say, well, you know, is there a possibility that there could be something greater, that, you know, there could be a consciousness in the universe that we just can't define? You know, even the most, you know, hardened atheist, you know, should be able to question that idea. Say, you know, just the existence itself, just existence. I don't want to get off track because I'm done with my notes and I should just move on and turn the video off, but the more I've learned about the patterns of life, the things that unfold in front of us, and yes, they really are mathematical in nature, the fractal geometry, the way that, you know, trees branch out, and lightning, the dendritic patterns, and just the amazing connections and the similarities in nature. Whenever there's certain types of people you talk to, and this I guess would be the last undesirable person that I didn't mention in there, would be the one who just wants to negate any potential positivity. So if you say, hey, maybe there's a possibility that we're here for another purpose, they say, oh, that's just bullshit, child's play. What are you, religious? You know, we're here and we die, and that's all there is to it. To dust. There's no point in living, you know. Cynicism to the max. Those can be some of the most draining people to interact with. You know, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have folks who are so religious that it's just disgusting. You know, that's all they talk about is Jesus all day long, and you're like, my God, man. And, you know, but between there is a happy medium where a person can say, yeah, I can see there's a little more to this than just, you know, poof, we're born and we die. but I don't have to define it and prove it to anyone. And that is the most freeing thing that you will ever find, in my opinion, when it comes to spirituality, is finally convincing yourself that there's something greater so you don't have to convince everyone else. And through understanding people, we attain a little more wisdom about our existence. So, not inviting toxic people into your life and not dealing with difficult people, you will always have a few, but don't let them hold you back from your own happiness, because if you want to really resonate with the types of, outlook that you want in your life, if you're looking for a positive, as spiritual as possible, and I don't use that, I use that word very jokingly in a way, because to me it's just the best way to define that feeling of just oneness with the universe, which it's one of the most beautiful things. You can experience it temporarily with psychedelics, and maybe like a satori or an awakening. People define it in all types of Eastern terms, but it doesn't matter. What really matters is that once you've had it, you get it. And yeah, so I'm going to go. This video's gotten really long, but hey, they always do, right? I'll talk to y'all later. Hope you have a wonderful day. And thanks to all my subscribers as usual. Thanks to my Patreon patrons. Thanks to anyone who leaves a comment down there, because I love reading what y'all have to say. Peace.